Hello and welcome to episode 248. Wow, is that right? Let me look. Hello and welcome to episode 248 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Omnipod, Dexcom, and Dancing for Diabetes. You can go to myomnipod.com/juicebox, dancing 4diabetes.com, or dexcom.com/juicebox to learn more. Well, this doesn't happen very often, but I'm giving you an episode on the day it was recorded. It's not with like a company. It's not like newsworthy, time-sensitive stuff. This episode is with Debra. And Debra has a daughter with type 1 diabetes, a son who has autism, and a father who has Alzheimer's. When Debra wrote me to tell me about her positive attitude, I thought, I want to find out more about that. And then she came on today and I thought, this is perfect. You know, we've been talking about management for a while and hearing people's diabetes stories. Let's hear something upbeat, something that's still helpful about living with type 1, but at the same time, maybe not so management-centric. Let's call this episode like, that sorbet you get before dinner to cleanse your palate. And then we'll jump right back into more diabetes pro tips with Jenny and people's stories that are, a little more diabetes-centric. Not that this isn't, but this conversation just, I don't know. It was really kind of beautiful. I really enjoyed it. Felt like I was in therapy, but my therapist was a friend. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise, and always consult a physician before becoming bold with insulin or making any changes to your healthcare plan.
I'm actually at Rutgers right now.
Are you really? What are you doing there?
I dropped Juliet off at the it's through Camp Najeda. It's like a day camp.
Yeah.
For diabetes, for type 1, and I actually went to I graduated from, so I always get very nostalgic being here. But she's at the camp right now, so I'm just I'm gonna hang out today.
Look around.
Just kind of walk through the old classes, and after we talk, I'm gonna go to my favorite Thai place, Highland Park.
That's excellent.
And
good for you.
Yeah, I'm right. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. My son has played baseball at Rutgers a number of times, so I'm familiar with the area right there.
Yeah, well, Rutgers, I don't know. I love it here. My husband went here too. We both went here, and I'm on Douglas campus right now, but I don't know if you're familiar. It's like by Douglas. It's so pretty here, but it just brings back a lot of memories.
I'm glad. My niece is an incoming junior, I think, at Rutgers.
Oh, at Rutgers?
Yep.
Oh, I think it's such a great, even when I loved it. I loved school here.
Cool.
I hated high school. Loved school. But loved college. Everyone was different, and it was liberating.
When is the last time you went to dancingfordiabetes.com? Or check them out on Instagram or Facebook? If you haven't done it in a while, I think now's the time. Unless you're driving, and then wait. Finish the podcast, because it's going to get really cool. And in depth, and you're just going to love Debra by the time this is over. And her stories about her father and kids, it's all incredibly heartwarming. But then have your heart rewarmed later today, dancingfordiabetes.com, or on their Facebook page, or their Instagram account. That's all I got for you.
My name is Debra, and I have a little girl with type 1, and I'm really grateful to be on this podcast.
Oh, thank you. Your email caught my attention because it was like, my father has this, my daughter has this, my son. I was like, wow. Then at the end you were like, and I have a really good, overall outlook. And I was like, well, that I want to hear about. So tell me a little bit about your daughter's diagnosis. How old was she? How long ago was it?
Well, so she was just diagnosed a year ago. So Juliet was diagnosed a year ago. We were actually in Princeton, and I took the kids to see The Wizard of Oz, and she got up 4 times to pee. Mm-hmm. And I actually got a little annoyed with her. I thought she was just bored. And I to this day, I feel terrible. But I actually, Juliet, I know you're bored, but your brother and I are watching this. And she's like, no, I really have to go. And she really was going. So then I thought, maybe she's got a bladder infection, So I said, does it hurt? And she's like, no, not at all. And so that was like my first moment of awareness. And then over the next couple of weeks, she was just drinking a lot and peeing a lot. And I took her to the doctor for what I thought was just maybe a urinary tract infection. Mm-hmm. But I really wasn't worried because she's healthy and she's happy and rosy and eating and
just
doing very well. Yeah, just exactly. Just peeing a little extra. And I thought, okay, it's June, it's hot out. But long story short, she peed in the cup, and the doctor walked in. She sent us to the emergency room, and it was like a kind of like a moment, like her lips were moving, but I just, it was a very bizarre.
It's like out of a movie, right? Like everything just sort of goes blank, and you hear kind of a deafening ringing in your ears, and nothing's quite getting through to your brain. And yeah, you're thinking, I just thought she had to pee. That's weird. Yeah, and now there's this much larger thing. I hope you understand that even though you didn't say it, Debra, you've already named this episode because I'm pretty close to going with She Was Off to Take a Wizard.
Oh, I love it.
Oh my gosh.
It.
As you were saying it, like there was a 5-year-old little boy inside of me trying not to giggle through what you were talking. I was like, oh my God, she had to go whiz during The Wizard of Oz. Why are we not all laughing together?
That's beautiful. I love it. No, that's so great. That's so great. I love it.
So it knocks you over, I imagine. Did you call your husband right away? You just go to the ER?
I did. We were admitted for the next 4 days, and it's like we had learn a whole new language. I actually handled it very well initially. My husband was it was harder for him. Okay. I feel like for me it came later, like 3 months or even 2 months later. That's when it kind of hit me, and I'm like, wow, this is hard.
Yeah.
This is really overwhelming. Because I had mentioned my son has autism, and that's been to me, they're both very difficult, just in different ways. I'm such a connector. What makes life worth living to me is the connections that you make with people, and meaningful connections. And so it's a little harder to connect with my son, even though he's considered highly functioning. He's very verbal. And, you would love him. He's very very quirky. He's obsessed with air conditioners, drains, vents, garbage disposals. But it's hard to connect with him like emotionally. He's and so that's been very hard for me. But in the same breath, he's also my greatest teacher, and so is Juliet, and so is my dad. And it sounds so cliche-ish, but there really are silver linings, to every cloud. There, it sounds very cliche-ish, but I do think that there's beauty in pain.
It's not. I don't think it's cliched at all to think that more difficult existences open up perspective on things that people who don't run into those problems, don't get to see those things. And,
right.
And there's little moments and teachable ideas and things that kind of hit you like, wow, I can't believe I didn't notice this about the world before. And it does open up. One side doesn't get closed off. It gets maybe slowed down, or it's not exactly what you want it to be. It's almost like, your TV with not the brightness all the way up. But then all this other stuff opens up. And if you allow them all to blend together, you end up with more than you would have had.
You're so right. And I think if someone were to say to me, 15 years ago, before I was married and had kids, they're going to say you're going to have a father with Alzheimer's, a son with autism, and a daughter with type 1, I probably, would not have had children. I probably would have taken a different path. But I'm so glad I did. Yeah. I'm so glad I did. I did have, I didn't know, because life it's richer and it's more meaningful. I'm glad that no one told me that, because it really is richer.
Yeah. Again, perspective. The you back then wouldn't have known what the you now knows, and you would have made the best decision you could have at the moment. It would have, in your in your retrospective look, it would have been wrong,
Right.
I get you.
Right.
And at the same time, I would tell you that I thought we were probably going to have 3 kids until Arden was diagnosed, and it slowed us down. Like it was
Yes.
hard to, in those, initial years, it was, it was so overwhelming. I didn't have anywhere to go to find out about all the things that were going wrong. They'd go wrong over and over and over again. And you just beat your head against the wall trying to figure out how to fix it. And
Yes.
the technology was terrible then. And I'm not
Yes.
terrible, but it was a meter and needles. So you were just like,
I
hey,
know.
let's see what we can do here with this.
I know, and I know that you hear this all the time. But I do want to thank you because you're really doing something wonderful for the community. You're really making type 1 not as scary, and you have found the method, and you have found ways, technology. You're really paving the way to make this more manageable and just so I really appreciate what you're doing. I know you hear this a lot, but
It's very kind of
you're making a difference.
Thank you.
You really are.
I can't tell you that hearing it over and over again, it doesn't get old. And I don't mean from my perspective. I mean because, you caught me on a day where I was doing sort of paperwork this morning, and I'm corresponding with different people. And one of them is the initial person who at Omnipod who heard my pitch about, this is what I want to do with this podcast. But I need you I need you to support it before it has any listeners. And I need you to put ads on it when I can't promise you anybody's going to hear them. But here's what I want to do, and here's what I think it can do. And I was commiserating with her because I had shared a note from one of you guys with her, and I told her, I was like, look, you did this as much as anyone else. You're the one who, after I had made that pitch to every person at every pharma company I'd ever bumped into. And if that person lost their job and somebody else got hired, I'd find that person and pitch them again. Over and over and over again. The person,
Yes.
the person at Omnipod that heard me was the 3rd person in a decade to hold that job. And they finally heard me. And I was like, here's what I think I can do with this podcast. And that it worked is amazing. But as I was writing her the note, and I told her how many people downloaded the podcast in the first 12 months of the show. And then I shared with her that in the month we're in now, 4 times as many people have downloaded the show this month as did the first year.
Wow. That's incredible.
And I was like, I think we're on like a precipice here. Like, I think we can blow this up to the point where this doesn't just reach the people who listen to podcasts and those people that they talk to. Like, I think I could make this bigger. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
So I'm really excited. I really am. I think the next couple of years.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I believe in the next couple of years, I can get this to the point where people have access to it if they want it earlier on in their diagnosis and
Yes.
really try to shorten the painful part.
That's incredible, and it takes a village, and it's amazing when you have a group of people that come together for a cause. I've seen it. I'm living it. I really believe in the power of our intentions and our thoughts. So that's really beautiful.
88% of surveyed Omnipod users agree that the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump makes living with diabetes easier. I have not been surveyed, but add me to that list. Make it 88% of users and 100% of Scott. But you're going to want to know why I say that. Well, it all starts with the company, right? It's a well-run company, so my customer service experiences are good. I get product when I need it. It's not a problem. And then from there, we're talking about putting the pump on, filling it, inserting it. It's easy. It's quick, really quick. Like, I can pit stop a pod in like a minute and a half. Middle of the night. It's easy. Fill the syringe, fill the pod, stick it on, push a button, self-inserts, done. From there, bolusing, temp basals, everything you do with your insulin pump is simple. Nice user interface on the PDM screen. Easy. I don't have to carry around anything with me, right? My daughter's not strapped to a insulin pump My daughter's not strapped to an insulin pump at the end of a bunch of tubing. That is easy. I can swim with it. I don't have to take it off to take a shower or a bath. Easy, easy, easy. And then when it's time to change it again, we're back where we started, at an easy fill and insertion process. Those 88% were 100% right. The only thing left for you to do is find out if I'm telling the truth, and that's easy to do because Omnipod offers a free, no-obligation demo. Go to myomnipod.com/juicebox, fill in the tiniest bit of information, and Omnipod will send a demo pod right to your house. Debra, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm watching it. I'm watching it now. While you and I record this, more people will download the podcast than downloaded it in the first month it was out. And that's
incredible.
So cool. And the notes, I got a note this morning on Facebook. I now have I have a force field around my emotions when I read your notes because I can't cry all the time, all day long.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So I just read them like, that's really cool. I make sure to remember that this is a really new and positive experience for the person who's writing it. And I try so hard not to just be blasé when I don't want to just be like, hey, good job, you're done, good, keep going, keep using the tools, it's going to work, because it's the truth. Just keep going, you'll be fine. But
and that's very hard. It takes a very special person to, like, I'm not on any media. I was years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I have mixed emotions. I see how incredible it could be. It's just I get very overwhelmed. Like you said, you want to respond hard, you want to put your heart into your responses. You don't want it to be just, but you can't possibly, when you have hundreds of thousands of people, writing to you, it's very hard to find that balance, I guess.
It's difficult to, like, if you're driving, I don't know, if you're taking a trip in your car and you have a rope and you can pull people out of holes, but every quarter of a mile, someone's in a hole. There, at some point, there's one person who you drive by and you go, you know what, I'll call 911 for that one. Because I can't, if I stop for each one of you, I'll never get to the end.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm starting to think that maybe I'm not supposed to get to the end. Maybe I'm supposed to stop at every person.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the destination. Maybe it's the trip. You know what I mean? So as long as I'm growing.
Yeah, I have a magnet on my fridge. It says it's not about the destination, it's the journey, to get there.
Yeah.
So that's really, wow, that's nice. Yeah, because I really think every person we meet and every experience we have, whether it's quote unquote positive or negative, is the teacher. Like I spent many years, like even in college, I took this comparative religion class, which was fascinating, in philosophy. I ended up studying psychology, but I found that I was searching for like a guru, and after being faced with all these struggles, I kind of realized life is the guru. Like every, autism is my teacher, diabetes is my teacher, Alzheimer's, like life is our guru. Life is the teacher. Every person, every experience, every, Yeah. And then there's days where you just don't want to do it. There's days where you just want to, you just get depressed and like, all right, I break, and that's fine too.
Yeah, you're just trying to live your life. You don't every day doesn't need to be a learning experience.
Right, exactly.
And that's really what you're talking about. Really, is the goal of the podcast, is to get the tools and the ideas so just commonplace in your life, right? So that something happens and you just do a thing. You don't have to sit around for 15 minutes like staring at the wall thinking like, what do I do about this blood sugar? You want to get to the point where you look at that data, you see the experience that's happening around you with the food or what's going on, and you just go, oh, you know what? This is a temp basal increase. I have to do it right here. And you trust it and you do it and it works and the tools work. You know what I mean? Like when you see a nail that needs to be hammered in, if you've got a toolbox in front of you and you don't know to pick up the hammer, you could make yourself crazy wondering, like, is it the pliers that does it? Is it the screwdriver? Like, what am I going to do? But when you can just look down, see nail, grab hammer, bang, 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 it's done, and never think about it, that's where I'm trying to get everybody with the diabetes.
Yes, and you're doing it through shared experiences and your own experience. These podcasts do pave the way to an easier transition and experience, and so I'm always sharing you diagnosed. I actually shared you in Wegmans the other day with a woman who her daughter has diabetes for 5 years, and she got very, very low, and then she ate all this, like a whole bunch of candy, and then she's like, oh, now she's going to be 300. I'm like, oh, why don't you just set a temp basal? She's like, well, what is that? I'm like, Well, first of all, have you ever listened to the, Scott's podcast? Then no, and now she's obsessed. Now she's been listening. She's like, this is amazing. And so yeah, no,
Debra,
it's wonderful.
Debra, I had you on with the intention of telling other people how to be happy, not to make me happy. But it's going well, though. I mean, I grew 6 inches since you and I started talking.
Oh
I'm now
my
6.
God! Well, it's funny. My employer, because I see the beauty in people and I like to share that. But my employer the other day, she's like, "Babe, I'm a 6. You're making me out to be a 10. I'm a 6." So I know I do have to kind of I know I'm a little I definitely I love to spread love and and see share with people the good, but sometimes it's a little.
It's not too much. It's not too much. Trust me, it's not too much. It's just at some point someone's going to be listening and be like, listen, he's probably a bad person in other parts of life. Like, let's let it go.
Oh, we all are, right? We have our shadows, right?
I have my moments, but I feel like I hit the main ones pretty well.
Yes.
But anyway, so I don't know anything about autism. Okay, so I'm assuming your son was diagnosed before your daughter?
Yes. I had studied psychology at Rutgers, and I actually coincidentally worked at it's like the Douglas School for Autism.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very bizarre that I interned there, and 10 years later I was touring the school for my son. I married an engineer. My husband's an engineer, and at 2.5, my son was doing a lot of sort of these engineering, like he is almost like he was afraid of other children his age. He would whenever we went to a birthday party, he would head under my my arm, and he wanted to look at the air conditioner. He wanted to see the way that they worked, and he wanted to look at the garbage disposal. So when I had some concerns, but he was talking, so that kind of threw me off. And of course, I also, the idea of autism at the time was it was very upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, it became more apparent behaviors and just that he felt differently. And so I'll never forget that we went to the developmental pediatrician, and she, again, just like Juliet, she murmured the words, your son has autism, and it's like everything. It was like a movie screen. Yeah. It was like I was witnessing a movie. And I felt like her words were very painful and almost too much to bear, but behind the movie was like a peace. And in every event in my life, whenever there's something really tragic that's almost too much to bear, there's also like a peace behind the tragedy. If that makes sense. So it's like I'm witnessing this movie, but I'm in the background, and I'm like, but hey, it's gonna be okay, And we got the diagnosis. And then 6 months later, we got the diagnosis that my father had Alzheimer's. Again, same thing. It was like as if I was witnessing, this terrible horror movie, but in the background, I'm like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. That's not to say that I didn't, go through depressions through the years, or I didn't go through moments or days, weeks of feeling pretty awful, because I did. But what I have found is that even with my dad, so my mom and dad got divorced when I was like the nicest divorce ever, like as far as divorces go. And he had a long-term, he was with this woman for about 25 years. And when they parted ways, that's when I started really seeing the deficits. I would go to visit him. And one time, I heard the shower on, and I said, Dad, is the shower on? And he looked confused, and I went upstairs, and the whole bathroom was like flooded. And then, a few weeks later, I went to visit him, and I smelled something burning, and he had left the remote control by the stove. So I said, Dad, what's going on? What, you left the remote control. And then he had gotten, so the icing, then he got into 2 car accidents. Thank God they were just fender benders. That's when my aunt and I got involved. I'm an only child, and we took him. We have a oh my God, why is the name escaping me? It's not a neuro doctor.
Neurologist.
Neurologist, yes. So my aunt, her husband's brother's a neurologist, and we went to 2 neurologists. did brain scans and a whole bunch of testing, and they said that he has, he has Alzheimer's. So my dad was a very smart man. He had a master's in quantitative analysis. I don't even know what that means. He owned his own CPA firm for 30 years. He was a mediator. He was a really smart, intelligent, good-hearted man. A great listener. But he was busy a lot when I was growing up. He was always at the office, and so when he got sick, he sort of needed me more. And growing up, he was my hero. Every little girl, like their daddies are usually their heroes. And then when I turned like 18, 19, I'm like, but I went through a little bit of a rebellious stage where I felt a little angry with him. But then when I became a parent myself, I realized, this is hard.
Right.
Sometimes it's easier to be like at work, like this is really hard stuff. Parenting, it's, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. So, becoming a parent made me grow in compassion, and he did a lot of good for a lot of people. So I feel like his Alzheimer's really bridged the gap between us, and we got very close, and it slowed him down. And I remember this one moment, we were walking through this garden because he had to go into an assisted living facility, which is right by my house, and I visit him every day. But we're going through this garden, and I said to my dad, what's the greatest thing you've ever done, Dad? He's traveled a lot, he's met a lot of interesting people, and and again, when I was younger, I didn't always feel like a priority. And he turned to me and he said, "You." And that was like a really beautiful moment that that I just hold in my heart. And this disease, it's sort of like a slow goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And there, now he's completely in a wheelchair. He's in diapers. He needs to be fed. I'm there every day. My mom is there. My mom's remarried, and her husband goes with her. I mean, it's so beautiful. Like, it's so amazing. Like how amazing my mom is too, and her husband. But it's been sort of like this like slow goodbye.
It brought you.
This.
Yeah,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It sounds like it brought you to a place that wouldn't have happened without the Alzheimer's. It just, like maybe he never gets to tell you that, and you don't get to be around him enough to see the other parts of him. And
like it brought us closer in ways. It really like this is the closest I've ever felt.
Yeah.
And in tragedy, there's also, and in sadness, there's also humor. So this is kind of funny, but after he got the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, my aunt and his best friend were like, we have to take the car keys away. We can't have him driving, around like this. And that was really, really hard trying to do that. So this is kind of silly. So we're for weeks we're talking to him, we're trying to meditate the best way to take the car keys. My husband's car broke. So we had to borrow his car for a few weeks.
And then he just forgot that you had it?
Well, no. What ended up happening with this, it gets even funnier. So I work in the city part-time. I took his car into the city with me. I actually parked in the garage. And after work, it was late, so I didn't have to worry about parking. Park after like 5 or 6 o'clock, you could park wherever. Mm-hmm. And so I had met up with my cousin at a restaurant, and I actually sat at the window right in front of where the car was. And we had just ordered, and we're about to drink our tea. And all of a sudden I hear, boom! I look out the window. My father's car is like standing straight up in the air. And again, a movie moment. I'm just like it just seems so unbelievable to me. My cousin is, I'm just kind of like very detached, like, wow, I can't believe my dad's car is totaled,
right.
And my cousin she's, kind of very emotional. She's like, did you see what just happened? Oh my God, and I walk outside. Some guy ran a stop sign, smashed into my dad's car, and his car was fine. My dad's car was totaled. And that's how we got the car away. and we got a check from the insurance company for the car.
That's amazing. It really did all work out, and the guy didn't get hurt, didn't have any damage.
No one was hurt.
That's
the guy,
amazing.
his car had like a little scratch, or like a little something to the bumper. Everybody was fine. It's crazy,
Excellent.
Life is sometimes it just
Well, you know what you said a second ago that made me think, and I could be so far off on this, and I obviously don't have any firsthand knowledge, but you referred to this part of your dad's life as a slow goodbye, and it made me wonder if maybe with your son with the autism, if it's not just instead of it being difficult to connect with him, I wonder if it's just a more slow connection. Like, I wonder if it's more of a slow hello.
It's so funny you're saying that, and you are so right on. I just got the goosebumps. So I always say my dad is, it's like he's progressing into this other world. He's leaving us, and my son is slowly coming in, taking him, much longer. But he is, he's amazing. My son, he is definitely, that's another thing. I resisted this for many years. Like I wanted peace, and I wanted it to be easier, and I wanted harmony, and, and I resisted challenges. I didn't want to deal with them until one day I couldn't, I broke. Like his behaviors were just so challenging. I just broke, and I put my hands up to the sky, bathroom floor, 3 a.m., crying out to I don't even know who, just someone, whatever you want to call it, And I really was sort of desperate and vulnerable and open and out of control. And it was in that moment that I just got the sense that my son is the path to enlightenment. Like, don't resist this. Like, face him and open yourself up. And he's your teacher.
Yeah.
He's the teacher.
Well, it's almost like the autism slows down time for him. So like things that he's getting to, he's just getting to slower. And there'll be things he probably won't get to, but because his growth will take more time. But in that, and it's hard for us when we're moving as fast as we are to want to slow down. But you described that you only got to connect with your father because he slowed down.
Yes.
So there's, it's these two things they're incongruous, right? You can't you can't figure out diabetes while things are happening in full speed. I think that's one of the reasons that the podcast helps, is because you can listen to it while you're doing something else. So what it does is it makes more time. Because I always allude to it, and I say it just sort of in flippant ways, like, this is all happening, but you have to go to work or take care of a different child or cut your lawn. There's other things happening. But if you could really stop and step back far enough, you could see this diabetes thing and make sense of it. And really, I tell people a lot, we talked about a person from Omnipod earlier that supported the podcast before they had any reason to. The other person, if you want to thank anybody for the show ever, it's my wife, who you'll probably never hear from, but who allows this time for me, like, to be I was a stay-at-home dad, right? So I got to pull back farther from the diabetes and take a bigger view of it. And then I got to, like, very slowly put together pieces, and then the pieces became ideas. Those ideas became methods, and then I was able to start over about how to tell people about them. I started writing about them. I didn't find that to be as quick as I wanted it to be, so I went into the podcast. And even some of the episodes, like, it's me still learning how to talk to you about the things that my wife allowed me time to figure out, right? And so that's how all this exists, whether you want to see it that way or not. I'm 100% positive it is.
Oh, yes. And I actually met her and your daughter when you talk at St. Peter's. And they're both so beautiful. Oh. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank my husband, too, because he is an incredible man. And it's sad that sometimes in a marriage you don't always, sometimes you don't always appreciate each other. But I, more than ever now, I really do. He's an incredible husband and father, and so devoted, so hardworking, and I'm very lucky, also to have him as a partner.
Those people,
life,
and what he's doing for you is he's making space, he's making time, and that time you're dedicating to slowing down so that you can be with your son as he's growing, right? Like isn't it funny? We all complain all the time when we have kids. I just blinked and it went by so fast. And that's not happening to you. It probably feels like it's taking longer, but you don't have that feeling of like, wow, I missed everything. Things are happening so methodically that you really do get to experience every one of them. And I guess you're finding at some points in the beginning, you weren't wired to be working at that speed, maybe.
I am taking those moments, and life has, because of what I'm being faced with, I do have to slow down. But it's kind of a crazy culture, that we live in with our phones, and we're always beeping. And sometimes I really do miss the 80s. I miss I miss when it was a little simpler. But I mean, this is great too. But it's a very fast-paced culture that we live in. But I will say that yes, I think I have I think I have more moments of being present, which most of us are either living in the past or the future, and most of us are not really in the moment.
I know a way to live in the future and in the moment. It's with Dexcom. That's right, the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor makes you feel like you're flying in a spaceship made out of diabetes technology, because it's so out of this world. But you don't have to leave Earth to find it. You really just have to go to Dexcom.com/juicebox. I mean, way easier than flying into space or jumping into a time machine, that kind of stuff, which is a lot of that doesn't exist for real. But what I'm saying is, if you want to feel like you're living in the future today, Dexcom's the way to go. What are you going to find when you get to that Dexcom.com/juicebox URL? Well, let me tell you. You're going to see the continuous glucose monitor that is at the top of its game. You are going to find the ability to see your blood sugar, not just what it is, not just, hey, my blood sugar is 140, but is this 140 rising or falling? And if it is, how fast is that happening? All that information at a glance. This information that you can also get on your Android or Apple phone. And if the person with diabetes in your life happens to be a loved one and not yourself, you can see that information on your phone. Amazing, right? Your kid could be anywhere and you could see their blood sugar. Dexcom.com/juicebox, or the links in your show notes, or at juiceboxpodcast.com. It's time to come to your future, which is technology's present, and get yourself a present. Isn't the English language amazing? There's so many words that sound the same, and many of them are spelled the same, but they mean different things. But no matter how you say or spell Dexcom, it means comfort, quality, better way of life. The show's about to start up again. But before it does, dancingfordiabetes.com. Dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com. Check them out on Facebook. Check them out on Instagram. You will not be sorry. Dancing, you know how to spell it, DANCING. 4 is the digit 4. And then diabetes, DIABETE is DIABETES. Then dot is the period, and com, COM. It sounds to me like you're doing an amazing job, because you obviously are being inundated in 3 completely different ways on 3 separate fronts, right? The diabetes feels dire and it feels immediate, and the autism is taking forever and is frustrating, and your father's, is slow. It's very, not a lot of people have to bounce between such varying ideas in one day, but you're doing it.
I'm trying. I think it does take that village, which I've sort of created. My mom has listened to every episode of your show.
Oh.
She takes notes and she sends them to me. I haven't listened to every episode, but I would like to. I'm listening to your show, and then also because I have a long ride into the city, I listen to podcasts on just trying to stay balanced and peaceful and that sort of thing. But I also, I do listen to your show. But my mom is always sending me notes, from the show, and just, and I have just some wonderful people that I'm surrounded by, and it really does take a village, I think, to raise a family, to build an amazing movement, just if everybody just kind of contributes a small piece of goodness to the higher good, it really does make a difference.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I met your mom in the lobby outside of the
You
room.
did, yes,
right?
you did.
That's so cool.
Well,
as you're talking now, I'm remembering more and more. It's so. I hope you're not insulted. Like until you said we met at the hospital, I didn't know. I'm sorry, but
no,
that's
not insulted at all. That's absolutely cool. Not.
I'm going to go back. They contacted me, and I picked a date, and I'm going to go back in about 6 months.
I know. I heard about. Yeah.
A very nice time.
I think that was January.
Yeah, I had a very nice time, and it was just I don't think I would have known the complete impact because there's a fair amount of people there.
Yes.
But one family in particular has kept in touch with me through social media.
I know exactly which family.
Yeah, and so it's great to see they came along so far in 6 months. It's really cool.
Oh, I told him he should do a class. I told him he should do a class because he's got it.
Yeah.
He has exactly what
he
you
figured
have.
I'm not. Yeah.
He did. I'm not exactly where you are, but that's okay. We're good. We'll get there.
We're all not going to be in the same place at the same time.
Exactly.
Right. It's to me, it's comforting to know that a better place exists and that you can keep moving towards it. You know, and if you're seeing, like we just said, like sometimes you see improvement, sometimes you see these lulls where nothing seems to get better. And those are the times you just have to sort of reinvest in what you're doing and say to yourself, I'm probably spread too thin in this moment. I'm not paying enough attention in one place.
Yeah. And you need a break. And like you said during the lecture, like there's always that one parent that, taking on this a little bit, a little more than the other, not there's no one's fault. You need a break. You need to just get a break from it, remove your, go out with the other child for a weekend or just sleep, just get some sleep. And so, I completely, I couldn't agree with you more.
I have a couple of questions. So you said that you thought your husband handled the autism better than the diabetes?
Yes.
Why do you think that was?
The autism was harder for me, easier for him. I don't know.
Just how it felt, you think?
I mean, I that's how it. I don't know. I think that we had already had one child with special needs, and then to have a second, it was like it hit him harder.
Unfair, yeah.
At first.
Yeah.
And at first, I'm like, we got this, honey. It was almost. I look back, I'm like, God, that was annoying. Like I look back at myself, like it did hit me. It did hit me like probably 2 or 3 months after the hospital. There was a period of like depression, sadness, followed by hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna get this.
It felt to me when you were talking that you went into survival mode first, and then after things leveled out, then you took time to be upset about it. And
yes,
right, and
yes, and I think maybe seeing my husband break down, like I'm like, okay, I have to be the strong one right now. Like,
there's only two of us, and he's crying. So
yeah, exactly.
Oh, listen, it's a little like a foxhole, right? If the guy next to you it can't stand up and shoot, it's on you, or you're going to get overrun.
Exactly.
It's very nice that you had somebody else, and it also opens a window into how a single parent situation really, you guys really need to lock down a friend or a family member to be like that other person for you, right?
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, right. Because when you're crying in the foxhole, you need somebody else to stand up and shoot, and it can't be the kids. It needs to be somebody else that's got your back for 5 seconds. You said something earlier that made me think about. You said about just how hard parenting is in general. You didn't realize till you had your own kids.
Oh God,
and I thought
nothing.
One of the things that I have found to be like that I'm the most proud of, because it is so difficult to do, is when you stand in judgment of your children stand in judgment of you for a second, and you recognize that they're right about their assessment of you, and that you have like screwed something up or failed somewhere or not done really what you could have done. Learning that you have to stand there and feel it and then process it. Yeah, acknowledge it, not be upset, not lash back out. Like all that stuff, that's an incredible, like you say, you learn from your kids. That's an amazing mirror, right? Because they hold that mirror up to you and you're like, oh, damn, they're right. And I can look back into my own childhood at the moments where I did that to my parents, and they, of course, just, shoved back twice as hard and stopped me from talking. But I don't, it was my first inclination as a younger parent. It was my wife that said to me, like, you have to let them talk. Like, they're making sense. And
Right.
oh, at first I was like, she's just going to use these kids to fix me. But no, but
Right,
seriously, it's one of the most difficult things to do. Besides seeing your kids struggle or be in pain and not be able to help, listening to them tell you, hey, here's my assessment of something I just saw you do. And in all honesty, this doesn't jive with how you've told me to live life. So you're going to have to adjust this or you're a hypocrite. And to sit there and think, wow, they're right, and then to make that adjustment's very hard. Very, very hard.
It is hard, and it's so humbling. There's times where I've kind of lost it, and then not lost it, but I have a lot. I think I have a lot of self control. I really don't get angry very often. I do with my kids. I definitely, but I think it's important to like you said, when your kids call you out to say, "What? I'm sorry. Mommy made a mistake. Mommy shouldn't have, reacted that way. And I'm human too. We all make mistakes, So I definitely, I have no problem saying I'm sorry or acknowledging.
It was most difficult for me because my father yelled. He yelled. That's how my dad would control a situation. He'd just be louder than everybody else.
Right. A lot of parents did.
And when I was younger, like, I fell into that quite easily.
Yes.
And it didn't happen as much because the kids were so easy. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for it. But when it came, it was my default. I was like, oh, I will just be louder than everybody else and shut this down.
Right. Of course. No, we go with what we know and what we are experienced. Right.
I have not broken all the bad circles in my life, but I'm really close on that one, and I feel very proud about it. So
no, that's you're better than me because I have yelled, and I don't like to with the kids. I really doesn't, in the moment it doesn't happen a lot. In the moment it'll feel good, and then like seconds later I'm like, God, that, but it's just like when they're not listening.
Yeah.
But my dad didn't yell. He just gave me the look. Go, Debra. He would go 1, 2, never made it to 3. And then my mom, who I sort of take after more in terms of like my parenting, she was very soft and easygoing but a real nurturer.
Mm-hmm.
Such a, but also a little bit of a worrier, but just so loving and so nurturing and that's sort of where, and so I think, a lot of it, some of it is my fault because they are very spirited, my kids, and when you're strict, they don't really take advantage. But softer sometimes, I don't know.
Yeah, the strictness inhibits them though, and what I've really found about myself is that when it's you mentioned like yelling when they're not listening. Like, my kids listen; they're not like that. It's for me, it's when. Not that they listen constantly or that yours don't, but what I'm saying is, for me, it strikes when they're looking at me and they're saying, hey, look, you just did this thing. And that's not like, what I've learned to do is just, instead of trying to stop them,
Right.
I just acknowledge them and I let my ego go and I say, look, I need you to understand, in this moment, I can't take any criticism. Like, I just don't, I'm tired, or I'm just, this day's been too much. And as you're right, but I can't stand here and do this with you right now because I just don't have it in me today. So you're not wrong. I'm not trying to stop you. I'm just telling you, if you have any compassion for me, you gotta let me off the hook right now. You know
I
what
get
I mean?
it. Yeah. I totally get it, and that is so important. I think to to try to put our egos aside, and because I feel like we don't. So many things can just be, I feel like a lot of us don't know how to communicate, and through my son, he has such difficulty communicating. Like even at work, whenever we have a really difficult client, they say, call Debbie. And my one coworker, she said, this woman is like borderline abusive. She's terrible. And I ended up spending some time with her. I said, that's nothing. Some people just don't know how to, for whatever the reason is. Maybe they're on the spectrum. Maybe they, whatever whatever the reason is, they just don't always know how to effectively communicate. And I think it's important not to take that personal and sometimes we have to put ourselves on the line a little bit and be a little vulnerable to open them up, if that makes sense.
It's funny that you say this. My wife and I had this conversation yesterday, and I don't know how this happened, but I was saying to her, I was like, now with, how we see people on the spectrum or autistic or anything like that, and how well they're being helped, and people are helping them integrate into like a life. You know what I mean? Like
yes.
A world where a couple of decades ago you would have just institutionalized somebody.
Yes.
Right. And
yes,
now that doesn't happen anymore. I'm like, now there's this, like, these people exist in the world now, and it's so interesting to watch how that's working.
I know.
It's really something. Here's how the conversation started, since we're talking about it. I was driving down the street and I saw this girl who I don't know the right way to say this, but she was clearly autistic. Right. But she was,
you could.
Right. But gorgeous, like a model. Right. And I thought like, this girl's not gonna, like, some guy's gonna be like, yo, what's up? And what happens next? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just stood there wondering, like, all of that. Like, I wonder where that goes and how that works. And
I know. No, I worry. I think about, I mean, I try not to much about the future, but I of course, you do have to think about that and plan a little bit through the principles of ABA, applied behavior analysis, which is like one of the only proven methods that has effectively shown to really significantly help those with autism. It's amazing how much these therapies really can help a lot of these kids to live, a somewhat, I want to say typical, but like a somewhat typical life. But it is a huge spectrum. I mean, there are children that are nonverbal, that are not potty trained. The kids in his class, they're fascinating. There's one child that's obsessed with the Titanic, knows everything there is to know about the Titanic, and there's another little boy that if you say October 30th, 1918, he'll say Tuesday. Like he has memorized all the calendar. And then there's another little boy who's obsessed with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. He knows and then, my son loves air conditioners, drains, vents, garbage disposals. They're like these, they're very quirky, and they get, like they get these like interests, and they're very smart. They're like little savants in certain areas, but then, struggle socially.
In the quarter of a block that I drove past this girl, I wondered about her entire life. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, like so many different ideas and what could happen. Yeah. Just the idea between, like, what if a malicious guy is the first person to approach her, versus what if it's just some sweet person who's just like, you know what, you seem like a person I want to know, and all the things in between. And I was happy for her, like, that she was going to have all these possibilities, because you think 30 years ago she wouldn't have been just walking down the street by herself going for a walk on a nice day, right? Like, her life would have probably been more segmented and restricted. And I don't know, it was just really okay. So all right, so listen. So here's the last part we haven't spoken about.
Okay.
it's you.
Oh.
We talked about, a little bit about the diabetes, but to me, this conversation is more about being positive in the face of health issues. And so, we learned about your father and his Alzheimer's, your son and his autism. Who's taking care of you?
Oh, I am. My husband is an incredible support, and my mom. My in-laws, husband's family. Yesterday, they went to the beach and I stayed back, and my in-laws were all there, and especially my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law. But I have learned that it is not selfish to go get a massage. It's not selfish to ask your spouse, like, take the kids, I need a break. I just want to sit under a tree, and I just don't want to talk. And I have learned to love me. And because you kind of have to spend the rest of your life with yourself, right? So you might as well learn to love yourself. And I love to read. I get a lot of fulfillment and joy from reading good books or listening to inspiring podcasts like yours. And I just really try to nurture and take care of myself. And I see a difference when I'm not. I do see a difference when I'm not carving out a little bit of time for myself. So I do think that it's just so important to carve out time for yourself.
Yeah. No, I think that I think if you really look at many families, there are people who take on roles, and these people kind of get pulled together naturally. Like, you don't normally see two like caregiver types married to each other. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I know exactly what you.
I 100% would tell you, I would joke about this, but Deborah, if you and I were married, we'd be the two least productive people on the planet, right? Like, we'd be just talking about how we felt all the time. We wouldn't have $15 into our name.
I know,
right?
I know.
Right. And so
it's so funny. Right? Well, yeah, no, I'm more of the caregiver.
And I am in our situation.
Yes.
Right.
He's more, but he's very committed. So I'm always the one. I make the breakfast, the lunch, the dinner, the smoothies, the foot massages. Like, I'm always, are you okay? How do you feel?
Yeah.
But then I'm also the first one, like, if he gets frustrated with me, I'm like, then why are we together? And I love you. And I made a commitment to you, and you're my what, so he's very committed and devoted, and
he's the guy, he's going to get up every day and go to work and make sure everything's okay.
Incredible. We do this cleanse every January. We do this 21-day cleanse, he and I. And the first couple of years, like, I cheated. Like, after the third day, he's like, did you have a dose? And I'm like, no, or did you have chocolate? He's like, I don't get it. He's like, if you make a commitment, you do it, like, what is, but he is so, like you said, he gets up every day. I don't think he's ever missed in 17 years that I've, been married, been with him. Like, I don't think he's ever missed a day of work. Like, he is just so, he's comes home, and he's so present with the kids, and he's just, he's
got an engineer's
committed.
Mind and a decency about him on top of that. Yeah, no, I hear you. I just.
What about with you guys?
Well, it's really the same. Kelly's just a bright, like, hardworking person, who my wife is probably one of the, in the space that she's in, she is probably one of the preeminent people in that, like, very niche world that she works in. And if you go all the way back to her first job coming out of college, and she got it was a temp position.
Right.
So she comes out, they put her in a double cube with a nurse, and it's at a pharma company. And my wife says the first day she sat there, no one talked to her. So she came, but not just no one talked to her. No one came up to her and went, "Hi, you work here now. This is your job." She quite literally just sat there. So the next day, again, nothing. So she turns to the woman in the cube and she says, "Is anyone ever going to, like, talk to me or approach me or tell me what I was hired to do?" Like, like this. She was like 22 years old. And the woman's like, "They will eventually, but you're a temp. They were probably just filling a position." And so my wife comes home and tells me this, and I was like, so from my perspective, I'm like, so you just get to sit there and they're going to pay you? And I was like, this is amazing. And my wife's like, I can't do that. So on the third day, my wife asked the nurse, "What are you doing?" And the nurse explained it to her, and it was drug safety. It's the protections of the things you don't see at a pharmaceutical company. My wife is the person who is standing up for you at a pharmaceutical company, right?
Wow.
And so there are these rulings and rules and things from the FDA, massive volumes of them. And my wife went and got them and sat down and read them. And now if you want to know anything about that, you come ask my wife in this industry, right?
That's incredible. That's my husband.
Yes,
that's my husband. I'll just watch a video or ask someone to kind of show it to me.
I would have had my feet up on the desk, and if someone came through and said, "Scott, what are you doing?" I'd be like, "I am the luckiest person in the world. I just got a job where I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to sit here and get fat and then die." Like, that's my whole plan,
Funny.
Right? And,
oh my God!
But my wife was like, "I won't waste this time."
Wow.
And so
that's incredible.
That's who she is, right? And it's just very fascinating because you also, because people are like that, you also kind of can't tell them, like, in the way you want to, because they don't feel things in the same way that other people do, because they're such, like, working individuals, like, right? They really are. They get up, they strap it on, and they go to work every day. It's really something. But if it wasn't for her,
it's admirable. Yeah.
Yeah, this wouldn't exist. because how would I afford the time to have learned all these things, or the time to figure out how to tell you about them, or the time to actually tell you about them? So if it was up to me,
if it wasn't for him.
Oh, please.
Exactly.
Yeah. I say all the time, if our roles were reversed, my wife and I would be lucky to live like in a shack on the edge of a dirty river. You know what I mean? Like that would be the best I probably could have done.
We're so blessed that we found
really worked out.
we found them. I think you appreciate marriage even more as you get older and the kids start getting older and you really are faced with some real, but I agree with everything you're saying, and your wife is my husband. Yeah. Oh. And thank God for them.
Oh, if they were married, they'd be so happy. They'd never talk to each other and they just go to work.
I know. That's so great though. No, that's I love it. It's
very funny. Well, I want to thank you so much for doing this. It was absolutely spectacular. I did not know what to expect. And it just went exactly. It couldn't have gone any better than I'd hoped. So I really appreciate you being this open and sharing this time with everybody.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, and I appreciate it too. And I'll see you soon. I'll see you in January.
I'll be back to hopefully you guys can get a whole new group of people to come in, and maybe some of the originals can come back and we can advance them along a little farther. That'd be really cool.
I already told my in-laws and mom, and I've extended it to God. We might have to get like a really big room because I think a lot of people. Yeah. We might actually have to, because I think a lot of people are extending it, we might actually have to get a bigger room for that. But I guess we'll see
the most exciting thing that happened after that was that I got word back that the person who leads the endo department was very pleased with the conversation that I started. And I thought that was great because that's my goal is I hope that doctors talk about this more like this,
Well, there is a doctor, part of the group who apparently is, he's been doing this a long time and he's sort of old school. And when that family that you were talking about before got their daughter's A1C down to I think a 5 point something, he basically was like, tell me how you did it.
That's so cool.
And, he told him about your podcast and he showed him what he was doing. And because he's sort of this particular doctor, he's not my doctor, but what I understand, very nice man, but I think just more old school, but he's now extremely open and advocating for, I actually had spoken to him once and I was trying to explain to him that, that we have too much coverage because he was the one on call. He's like, what do you mean? The numbers are fine. They're 75, 80. I'm like, yeah, but they were double arrows down. From what I understand, after that family that both referring to before, after her daughter's A1C went down to a normal range, he said, show me what you're doing. And so now I understand he's, very open to this and encouraging of it.
Maybe we'll see him then when I come back. Yes, that would be very cool. I would love that.
Exactly.
I would absolutely love it.
So, well, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and
you too.
I'll see you soon.
Yep, you go be nostalgic at your alma mater, and I'll talk to you later.
Yes, I will.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I believe that Debra is the first person to record the podcast while wandering around a college campus. Very cool. I again loved this today. It's why I'm getting it right to you. I want to thank Dexcom, Omnipod, and Dancing for Diabetes for supporting the podcast with their ads. Please consider supporting them back with your patronage. Dexcom.com/juicebox, myomnipod.com/juicebox, dancing4diabetes.com, or the links in your show notes, or at juiceboxpodcast.com. One last thing. This Friday, another Defining Diabetes will come out. At the end of it, do I want to put it at the end of the Defining? Nope. Here's what I'm going to do. Yes, I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to do, yes. Here's what I'm going to do. On Friday, Defining Diabetes will come out again. Another short, couple-minute episode where Jenny Smith and I define a word or phrase that part of your life with type 1. I'll also release a quick episode announcing the giveaway, the 1 million download giveaway. That's what I'm going to do. So that you guys can go. Does that make sense? It does, right? Guys, sometimes I don't know what to do. Sometimes I'm amazed the podcast is popular at all, or that I have any luck running it. I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to release the time. Yeah, right? Yes. All right. This is what I'm going to do. For certain now. I've just talked myself into it. This Friday. Let me find out what the date is on Friday. Because you're getting this on the 30th of July. Friday's the 2nd of August. It's the day before my anniversary. Ooh, I should get an anniversary. Oh, Jesus. All right. Different problem. For now, I'm learning a lot right now. For now, Friday, August 2nd, you're going to get another episode of Defining Diabetes and the announcement for the big giveaway, the 1 millionth download celebration. Going to be 9 billion different ways to enter. They're all going to be incredibly easy. And one winner is going to get the whole thing. Everything. It's not like, hey, swag bag from Omnipod, swag bag from Dexcom, free diabetic bag, this, like you'll get this and you'll get, no, winner gets the whole thing. Winner take all. You understand? Look for the announcement on Friday the 2nd. I'll spend a few minutes talking about what getting to 1 million downloads has meant to me and what I think it means to the podcast itself and where it's going. And, we'll just talk about it for a little bit. Might get a little weepy or sentimental. It's hard to know what'll happen exactly. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. I'll see you on Friday for the announcement and for another Defining Diabetes episode. I hope you guys are having a great summer. If you live, in the hemisphere where it's summer. And for those of you listening in the other one, I hope it's not too cold. How many hemispheres are there? Hemisphere. Uh-oh. Now we're getting into stuff I don't know. You guys want to look it up before I go? How many hemispheres are there? We are not the first person to wonder this on Google. 4. Any circle drawn around the Earth divides it into 2 equal halves called hemispheres. There are generally considered to be 4 hemispheres. What does generally considered mean? Is there 4? All right. How can there be generally considered? I don't enjoy that as an explanation. Anyway, northern, southern, eastern, and western. The equator or line of 0 degrees... The equator or line of 0 degrees latitude divides the Earth into the northern and southern hemispheres. All right. Well, yeah, but what about the other... All right, geez. Now we got to look into this more. All right. The equator or line of 0 degrees latitude divides the Earth into the northern and southern hemispheres. The northern hemisphere contains North America, the northern part of South America, Europe, the northern 2/3 of Africa, and most of Asia. The southern hemisphere contains most of South America, 1/3 of Africa, Australia, Antarctica, and some Asian islands. There are differences in the climates this is how we got to this, of the northern and southern hemispheres because of the Earth's seasonal tilt toward and away from the sun. In the northern hemisphere, the warmer summer months are from June through September. This makes sense because it's July right now and it's warm here. In the southern hemisphere, summer begins in December and ends in March. All right. There's some stuff here about prime meridian. I do not want to get into that. This is going off the rails. I'll see you guys later.